So thank you very much for joining our presentation this morning. Sorry, there we go. Here I am. My name is Jill Wilk. I am the Vice President of HR Services for Pay Entry, and I handle all things HR related, specific to any questions that you may have regarding HR. So today we are going to cover the topic of managing remote teams successfully. So now that we are all part of this new landscape of working from home in many cases, things have changed, and we want to talk about what has changed for everyone and work with how to manage that best. We'll be talking about managing ourselves and our teams for promoting good communication. We're going to talk about managing for accountability to make sure that our goals and objectives continue to move forward, even though we are working differently. And perhaps one of the most important things, I think, is managing to maintain a high level of morale. We all know that with the change in working environment, people handle change in a very different way, and we want to make sure that we're promoting an environment that helps people manage that change appropriately. So it looks like from our poll, before we move on, we have only 3% of people in the call have worked from home always, and about 40% have never worked from home, and 58% have worked from home at some point. So we are in a gray area here where most people have not worked from home 100% of the time, most of the time. So I just want to acknowledge that we're in a different time period now. So let's talk about what has changed in this new landscape. Communications have changed. So now we are working in an environment that is not face-to-face all the time. If it is face-to-face, it's usually from 6 feet away. So we're not dealing with the same sort of nonverbal cues that we can assess when we're communicating on a regular basis with people. Obviously, our technology has changed. Things don't work the same way that they used to work. We used to be able to go into work in many cases and access our systems very easily, great bandwidth, great technology, access to everything at any time. Now we have to work harder. We have to do a lot more planning for our resources in advance. And we have to deal with technology that sometimes fails. So that's a whole new skill. We have completely different work patterns. So whereas before we maybe had shift work, where people are going into an office from 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 10 to 10, whatever that shift may be, now our work patterns have changed. People's patterns in terms of how they work, where they work, how long they're able to work without interruption, that's all changed. And of course, the work schedule has changed. Now people are able to go into the office by walking into another room. So a commute has disappeared in many cases. So that changes if people may be working much longer hours than they usually did just because they can. I'm going to close the poll. Thank you for that. And finally, socialization. Socialization has dramatically changed because we don't have the same, again, face-to-face contact. And so we're going to be talking through what that means working in this remote world and how we can help to maintain a level of socialization with our teams, even though we don't see them face to face. And finally, what's changed is the teamwork aspect. We still may be part of a team, but we're part of a team in a different way. Whereas you could call your team to a quick group huddle or a team meeting before work, during work, after work, going out, socializing. That's not the case right now. So how do we keep promoting teamwork in this new landscape? So now we talk about the fact that we as managers now need to become leaders in a very different way. And I want to bring up this really interesting study that was part of a Gallup research poll. And they said what people need from leaders now is trust, compassion, stability, and hope. Constant communication builds trust. And I think that is really relevant right now in the way that we look at building trust with our employees by making sure that we are constantly communicating the message of safety, that there is safety right now. Safety is the most basic trust. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you see that safety is the pillar of what those needs are. So it's really important that employees' needs and expectations have changed and leaders need to respond to these quickly, responding to questions and responding to concerns. And by doing this, this builds trust with employees. And in a sense, that builds the compassion that you have for your employees because now they understand that you understand them. And that builds a sense of hope. Right now, sometimes it's easy to feel very hopeless because of this situation. And we as leaders need to make sure that we are continually challenging ourselves to build hope for ourselves and for our company and also for our employees. So responding to needs of employees is key, and we will talk about some communications in order to help achieve that. If employees do not see that you have responded in a quick manner to their questions and their concerns, they will create their own reality as to why. So it's really important that if normally it took us a day to respond to someone's email, we respond quicker than that. If normally we responded to a text within 5 hours, we do it within 3 hours. So changing in some way so that employees understand that you are listening to them, you're listening to their needs, you're helping set their expectations. And also, leaders always need to ask team members what they need to perform at their best. This is something I think that many of us maybe aren't used to on a regular basis, is asking for feedback. Now in this time period, more than ever, we need to ask for feedback from our team members, asking them what they need, because most likely what they need now is very, very different than what they needed a month ago. And what they need next week may even be more different than that. So communication, let's talk about that. I'm going to bring some tips up here. Daily check-ins, very important. Most companies or many companies are doing face-to-face via different technology media. Check-ins. This is a really positive step because this is a way for you to check in with your employee or with your team very frequently. And frequency is very important to building trust, which we just talked about in the previous slide. It's really important when we're talking about our daily check-ins to make it simple. If you try to cram too much information in a daily check-in, your employees could very well be overwhelmed. And the sense of feeling overwhelmed can really hamper someone's ability to perform. So I say ask questions once, then listen 3 times. Very important. It's really important to make sure that when you are checking in with your employees that you are doing twice as much listening as talking, because it's in that conversation that follows that long dramatic pause when you ask them for questions. It's that information that follows the pause that is really the gold nugget, because they will tell you if they have the opportunity and they know that you're listening. Third is to be specific. As I mentioned previously, in the absence of specific information, we tend to create our own rumors. We tend to create all kinds of scenarios that are going on in the background, and because we can't see it, we don't know. And if we don't know and we're not told anything specific, we create our own chaos. So it's really important to be very specific with your employees. Then make sure that the schedule works, and be prepared to be flexible, which is really difficult if you are used to having core hours that your employees are working. It's very, very easy to say you still need those core hours, but it's really important that we recognize as leaders that we need to be flexible with our employees, because of course they are dealing with realities that maybe they weren't dealing with before. They're dealing with children in the house. They're dealing with, in my case, pets in the house as well. They're dealing with competing bandwidth issues. They're dealing with technology issues. So it's really important for us to be flexible. And then I say get personal, but not too personal. So what does that mean? That means it's okay to ask your employee, how's it going? What's going on with you? How can I help you? It's okay to ask about how things are going in the house, how things are going where you're working in a different situation, because they need to talk. And if you are the person that they are talking to, you are again establishing that trust. We don't want to get too personal, because there's information that as their manager, as their leader, there's information that crosses the line, and we don't really want to get into that. We don't want to get into being representing ourselves as someone that we're not. But it is okay to get personal enough to ask questions. Then we look at group meetings. Whenever possible with your group meetings, make it face-to-face. It's very awkward. People don't look their best. People don't get dressed up for a video chat, but it is important when possible to make sure that everything is face-to-face. Also, set an agenda for your group meetings. Send that out to the team in advance, but make sure you're flexible enough to move different action items based on the feedback from the group. One thing that I find very helpful with group meetings that are for remote workers is to assign different roles for each group meeting. You might have someone that's in charge of recording what's going on. You might have someone that's in charge of the time parameters. You might have someone who's in charge of the technology. If people have specific roles to fall into, it tends to make them more productive. So it's really good if you can be flexible with assigning different roles for different people for different group meetings. And whenever you can, use technology to chronicle the meeting details and share these details with the team. That's really important when we start talking about accountability, because then you will have a record of what happened during the meeting. So the next part of communication deals with things that maybe we weren't used to dealing with before because we didn't have to. And now we have this big thing called emotions. And we are all dealing with many emotions right now that maybe we didn't have a month ago. So this is a really great quote that I found that I think is really pertinent to this situation. You can't hide your mindset or how you see other people. Work on checking your own preconceived perceptions and treat people as a blank slate. So the reason I point this quote out is, and this was from a program director at ESMT Berlin Business School, who is an expert in organizational culture. And the reason I point this out is because we tend to, as human beings, have a preconceived notion of what is going on the other side of the phone, what's going on the other side of the computer, but we don't know. And it's really important that when we're talking to our employees or we're talking to groups of employees, that we're treating them as a blank slate and being curious. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, about being curious rather than being judgmental. So it's really important that we work on managing our own emotions, which means managing our own preconceived perceptions. Next one, very hard for me and maybe some of you, don't take things personally. I'm going to point this out at the same time. Don't try to tell tone from text or email. Pick up the phone. These two tie in very easily with each other. It's very easy for us to see a text, to see an IM, to see an email, and to interpret it in a certain way and take it personally, and to think that people are inferring what maybe they were not. So we need to make sure as much as we can, again, we don't preconceive what we think other people are thinking or feeling. Try not to take it personally. And definitely, if you are questioning the tone of a text or an IM or an email, pick up the phone and ask. And lastly, as I mentioned, trying to be curious rather than accusatory. So this comes from the practice of mindfulness, and I don't want to get too psychological here, but I think it's important to point out in the mindfulness practice that they point out that being curious is a real good way of not judging. So maybe you're curious about why someone behaved in a certain way, why someone responded to your email in a certain way. Rather than prejudge what you think they meant, maybe pick up the phone and be curious about why they responded in the way that they did. So next we're going to move on from communications to managing for accountability, because of course we all have goals and objectives that need to be achieved. So how do we manage to achieve these goals? First, we want to make sure that we are very clear with delegation, and make sure you ask your employees for clarification. Make sure they understand what you're asking them to do. Because of course, when we're working remotely, you can't sit down with them at the table and show them how to do something. And in many cases, you're describing how to do something over the phone and you can't see what they're seeing. So make sure that you ask for clarification, make sure they understand what you're asking them to do. Encourage knowledge sharing across the team. Use strengths of the team members to unify the team and boost morale. So what I mean by this is make sure you encourage employees to share the knowledge that they have. And you may find by doing this that people may have strengths that you didn't even know they had. I'm just re-emphasizing this, set very clear expectations for your team. Make sure everyone knows what they need to do, what they need to accomplish, and again, be flexible. Then make sure you help team members with prioritizing what's important and what's not. Make sure you help them to narrow down the focus to maybe one or two initiatives or goals at a time. Sometimes people have issues with being able to prioritize, and maybe they never have had to do that before. So now's a great time to help them focus and plan what's important. And probably most important in this segment is focusing on achievable tasks, because this is going to lead to better outcomes. If you give them a task that you know that they can't achieve, they'll get frustrated and they'll give up, and your productivity will be lowered. So again, if you give them achievable tasks, they won't fall victim to having this lack of confidence if they can't achieve the task. Giving them achievable tasks is going to build positive redirection and hopefully prevent some of the negative thought process that may be going on. And again, it's going to build confidence and make them feel as if they can accomplish goals. So in this last section, we're going to move into managing for morale. Of course, if you don't have good morale, then people will not achieve their goals, and no matter how much communication you have, it will not allow them to work productively. So the first thing I'll say is give yourself a break and give others a break. It is really easy right now to kind of get down on yourself and criticize yourself for not achieving everything humanly possible. Again, acknowledging that we're in a different time period, things are different. It's a very big transition, and there are many feelings of loneliness, isolation, stress. Give yourself a break. We have to realize that the line has changed. We've moved the goal line, and this is not a normal time. When you're talking to employees and they are behaving in a very different way, it's really important to look for patterns. Is this something that they always do, or is this something that maybe they've just started doing the past month? So in HR, we always try to look for patterns as opposed to one-offs. If it's something that's a pattern, then it's really important to address it, and I'll talk to you about some ways we can help you with that. But you want to look to make sure it's not just a one-off situation. Really important to take a step back if you encounter issues that maybe you've never encountered before and you don't know how to respond. Take a step back, regroup, finish later. Take responsibility for yourself. Also, take care of yourself. Again, really important in this situation to take time to care for yourself so that you can properly take care of your team. Then it's really important to keep the company culture real. Continue with the things that makes your company your company. It could be something that's funny, work appropriate, emails, texts, chats. Many people are doing virtual happy hours, virtual meetings, virtual lunches, virtual coffee breaks, anything that keeps your company culture as much about your company as possible. Take time for what we call water cooler talk. Check in personally, share stories with your coworkers, set up team chats, and encourage that in communication. And also, one thing that's been pointed out by many psychologists during this is to encourage people to dress for work. It's very easy, and myself included, to just hang around in your pajamas all day. But that sense of normalcy of people getting ready for work and getting dressed for work, that takes away from the sense of routine. So the sense of routine plays a large role in our mindset overall for the day. So if you can encourage people to dress for work, even if it's just their top, encourage people to do that. So now we talking about setting an example, making sure we as leaders are setting an example. And how do we do this? One of the things that's really amazing to me is how first responders and nurses and doctors are responding during this time of crisis. And I think we can take a lesson in how they respond and adapt our behaviors in this time of crisis. Because what we're doing may not be saving lives, or in some cases, many of our clients are out there saving lives, but it is a crisis, and for all of us, it hits us in a different way. So we need to set an example for our team and show them that we're able to adopt new behaviors in this time of crisis. We need to lead by examples. Take breaks when you need to, take time for yourself, show them that it's okay to do that. Make sure that they don't think that they need to work 12 hours a day just because you do. If they see you taking breaks, they will take breaks. So it's really important to lead by example and show them that it's okay to take time to take care of yourself. Again, we've talked about this. Practice your patience. Listen more than you talk. And as I said, we can learn from the first responders on how to deal with emergency situations and unpredictable outcomes, which we are in right now. And this is another quote that I found from a professor of leadership at a business school in Belgium. Fear and anxiety can drive people to become self-focused, paralyzing them so that they are prevented from continuing to work productively. So in many cases, people have a lot of fear, people have a lot of anxiety. So what do the first responders who are in this type of situation encourage? To keep people moving. That is the number one way to keep people from having fear and anxiety, is to keep them moving. And how do you keep them moving? You give clear instructions, and this, in a sense, provides some distraction from any fear and anxiety that they have. So learning from those first responders, I think, is a good lesson to us all. So now I'm going to tell you how we can help you. We are here for you when you need us. Many of you know about HR services, many of you don't, but I always try to go with what is free. Free is good. So you have access to us for assistance for free on a limited basis. So anything we can answer in 15 minutes or less, just like the insurance commercial, is included for you. So please use us whenever possible. If you have questions about how to deal with a specific situation, I just want to put it out there. I am here to help you. You can email me, you can call me. My contact information is on this presentation, which will be sent to you. Please use us as needed. If there is specific project work that you need done, if you need a new telecommuting policy written, if you need your handbook reviewed, if you need something more than just what we can answer in that 15 minutes, we can do project work for you. And also, again, many of you know about our subscription service. And I apologize, March HR service offering for free should be April because we are now in April. So we definitely are offering consultation now for free. Anything that you need to have a consult on, we are offering to you free of charge. So please use us for that, and you can feel free to email me after this presentation and I will set that up for you. I want to thank all of you, and before I go, I want to see if any of you have any questions. If you want to type them into the chat box. And oh, I have a question about emailing the PowerPoint. Yes, absolutely. I will be emailing the PowerPoint out to all of you and also to anyone who could not attend. And I will also be sending a very, very short questionnaire. I think it's 3 questions. So you can let me know how I did. And I really, really would appreciate your honest and open feedback so that I can improve as best I can. So I would really appreciate that. I do have a question in here. A lot of us feel social distancing will be the new norm. How do you think it would be approached if someone wants to continue to work from home after this is over? I think that is one of the best questions, and I'll tell you why. There is a lot of talk about how this will impact the work scene once the shelter in place is lifted. And many people have questions about that, both from an organizational perspective, but also ADA accommodation perspective. If people have been working from home all this time, maybe organizations are questioning maybe they should always work from home. And I think that I don't have an answer to that question, unfortunately, but I am doing a great deal of research and will probably be holding another webinar on just that topic, because it is very possible that many companies are going to start to have their employees work from home on a regular basis. Some on a cost-cutting measure and some for other reasons. But it is definitely a work in progress, and I think it's really important that we keep that on our radar. So definitely more to come on that. And if you want to email me or call me, we can talk about that a bit more because I think it's really important for us to keep it on our radar. All right, I don't see any other questions. I love the comments though, so thank you. So again, thank you for joining, and I will be sending out the PowerPoint shortly after. Thank you again. Please all take care of yourself and have a great day.